Good afternoon, everyone. I tell you what a beautiful sight this is. What a beautiful, beautiful afternoon. I want to thank you so much, Aisha, for those words and for that introduction, and to say how thrilled I am to see all of you. I won't be before you terribly long because I understand that I'm standing between you and lunch, and some of you, I understand, are quite hungry, and so I promise not to be before you very long, but I wanted to come and welcome you to Prince George's County, which I have to tell you, it's no exaggeration when we say this is the crown jewel of Maryland. So you are here this morning, and we are thrilled to have you. I am also honored to welcome you to the 17th Annual Women's Equality Luncheon, and to say thank you so very much to my good friend and colleague, our House Majority Leader, Congressman Steny Hamilton Hoyer. Thank you so much for hosting us yet again this year. And I said that we were the crown jewel, and so that you know this is not an exaggeration. Who else can boast that they have raised and had among them the House Majority Leader except Prince George's County? And so we are so proud of his leadership, proud of how he has represented us. And in this last year, in 2018, I have to tell you that Congressman Hoyer has been a friend to women. You don't assemble a room like this room unless you have been there for women. And I don't mean that he showed up just this year. And I say this because I'm proud of this, that he has served in elective office now for 5 decades. You do that with sacrifice and with love, and he has represented us with dignity, and he has stood beside women. And I'm one of those women. When I decided to run for office in 2009, at a time where they said, well, why in the world would you do that? In fact, I said, I'm running for state's attorney, and one of my opponents said, well, this is dangerous work. We don't know why this is dangerous work. We're not sure that a woman should run to be chief law enforcement officer of our county. Well, Congressman Hoyer was the first call I received when I won that election. They said, you have a call. I picked up the phone, and the first person to show up to congratulate me was Congressman Hoyer, who had given me his support. I want to thank you so much for that. And when I had the crazy idea to come back again because I felt that there was so much misery, the courthouse is full of misery and pain. And I thought, well, if I'd only have the opportunity to go a little higher, maybe we could prevent some of the pain from happening. But before I could even make that decision, Congressman Hoyer called me one day and said, I need to meet with you. And he met with me and said, wherever you go, I'm with you. If you decide to make that next step, know that I'm going to be with you. And on election night at this very hotel, the first visit I got came from Congressman Hoyer. Thank you so much, Mr. Congressman, for your support and for support that you've given so many of us. And I think because he deserved that support, I'm proud to say that in 2018, women showed up all across this country in a tsunami and these elections to make sure that we elected women for Congress in unprecedented numbers that flipped that House and helped him to reclaim that majority leader title. Well deserved, well deserved. And of course, it's no secret that Congressman Hoyer has been so effective as our ally in our fight for equality for all women. Just this year alone, he has worked with his colleagues in the House to do things like pass the Paycheck Fairness Act, which would finally guarantee equal pay for equal work. He's also worked with his House colleagues to pass a reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, critical legislation. We want to thank him also for his leadership in that regard. And I know in a moment, and so if you can help me just one final time before can you please help me to go crazy and acknowledge our host for today, Congressman Steny Hoyer. And so I know that the occasion has been laid out, but we are here today to celebrate. To celebrate in 2 regards. First is to celebrate the crucial milestone, which was the ratification of the 19th Amendment of the Constitution, which gave women the right to vote 99 years ago. And as we celebrate that milestone, We also have an opportunity to celebrate some of the trailblazers that created in our fight for equality, like our very own, and this is one of the baddest women to have ever walked the halls of Congress, our speaker this morning, Congresswoman Maxine Waters. An opportunity to first meet Congresswoman Waters, and she won't remember this, but I was a Congressional Black Caucus intern in 1992, working on the Hill, and had just gotten there, and this is only the year after Congresswoman Waters was elected. And I'm walking down the street, and I do want to acknowledge quickly, you know, they say that there's a special place in hell for women who do not help other women, right? And so I have not been able to thank, there's a woman in this room today, Ingrid Gavin. Ingrid, if you were here, who hired me back in 1992, I saw her back there, but thank you so much, Ingrid. But I was there, and they said there's a woman here on the Hill, and she is a real bad lady. Look at her walking down the street, and here comes this woman in a short red skirt and some heels, and it's Congresswoman Waters, and she meant business walking down that street, and she was elected at the right time. How many of you remember the insurrection in Los Angeles in 1992, when so many of us watched in horror as the events unfolded there? And that was the moment, the first moment, that I had the opportunity to see Congresswoman Waters and to see her heart pour out across that television, I think that caught all of us at a time where anger and frustration had reached a boiling point. And Congresswoman Waters made a statement, and that statement sticks even today. And she said, our anger and frustration must not drive us to the streets. We must use our minds and our God-given talents and our legacy of perseverance and struggle. We must fight our battles in the courtroom and in the halls of power. We must organize and rally and protest, and through it all, we will celebrate living, not dying. Those were her words. They are true today, as true as they have ever been. And so today is a celebration. I'm so honored to have been a part of it. When I tell you that Prince George's County is the crown jewel, it is because we have the opportunity to celebrate all that the ratification meant. When we have here a female county executive, a female state's attorney, a female chief executive officer of our school system, a female fire chief, a female president of the community college in Bowie State University, the chief judge is a female, the clerk of the court is a female, the chair of our Senate delegation is a female. We are grateful for the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. And as I wrap up, we understand that our fight is not over. And only if I remember the words, I'll leave you with the words of one of our country's greatest storytellers and authors, our sister Toni Morrison, who, as you all know, passed 2 weeks ago. Her writings were powerful, and they led her to become the first Black woman ever to win a Nobel Peace Prize in literature. And what she said was, women's rights is not only an abstraction or a cause, it is a personal affair. It is not only about us, it's also about you and me. And so what I say to you as I leave is that our fight for equality is personal. It is personal. When I look at my daughter and remember that the reason that I got involved in this work in the first place was because I did not believe that she was inheriting a world that was as safe as the world that I grew up in. Well, I have to tell you that it is so painful to recognize that at 14 years old, even as she prepares to go to school, she's doing something I never had to do, to learn how to hide in a closet in case a gunman comes in her classroom to try to take her life. It is important that all of us have the opportunity to serve, but it is very important that women also have a right to serve. And so this work is personal, this day is personal, and I want to thank you again, Congressman Hoyer, so much for what you have done, not only for women in this county and in this state, in this country, but I just thank you, Mr. Congressman, for how you have supported us so that our work will spread across the world. Thank you so much to all of you all. May God bless you.
I have the privilege of serving with some extraordinary people. Aisha mentioned that we had the most diverse caucus in the history of the Congress of the United States on our side of the aisle. There are 36 new women in the Congress of the United States. Over 100. 35 of those women are Democrats. One Republican new member who's a woman in the Congress of the United States. Why? Because our party is committed to making sure that the Congress of the United States looks like the United States, is like the United States, feels like the United States, empathizes with the United States, understands the pain of the United States, understands the challenges that confront the United States. And to do that, we need everybody there. I not only serve with those 35 women, and yes, that one additional woman, but I serve with an extraordinary group of women, and none more extraordinary than our speaker today. Maxine Waters has represented parts of Los Angeles in the Congress since 1991. That means she and I have served together for 28 years, side by side, respecting one another, helping one another, lifting one another up. Maxine Waters is my friend, but not only that, she's a hero, as I know she is to so many of you in this room. She's chair of the House Financial Services Committee since 2013. Thankfully, she's now she's a ranking member. Thankfully now, she's now the chairwoman of one of the most powerful committees in the Congress of the United States. She oversees issues concerning all of banking, consumer finance, housing, combating international terror financing, and protecting consumers. This is one of the broadest jurisdictions of any committee in the Congress of the United States, and you're going to hear from its chair. She is one of 7 women to chair committees of the House. Let me repeat that again. She is one of 7 women chairing committees in the Congress of the United States. And it's not just any committee. Financial Services is what we call an exclusive committee. It means it's one of the most important committees, and you just serve on one committee. Now we give some waivers because we're in the majority and we have some extra seats available. Nita Lowey from New York, chairwoman of the Appropriations Committee. That's about $500 billion, maybe close to $600 billion, maybe a little over that, 633, I think to be exact. Nita Lowey from New York. Zoe Lofgren, the chairman of the House Administration Committee that runs the House side. Eddie Bernice Johnson of Texas, chair of the Science and Technology Committee. Very important to Goddard Space Flight Center, just a few miles from here. Nydia Velasquez of New York, Puerto Rican, chair of the Small Business Committee. Think how important that is to include women as entrepreneurs and growing businesses and getting capital. Nydia Velasquez. Kathy Castor of Florida, chairing the Special Task Force on Climate Change, one of the most critical issues we confront in the Congress of the United States and we confront globally. Kathy Castor of Florida. And lastly, but certainly not least, Carolyn Maloney. Carolyn Maloney, who is head of the Joint Economic Committee. No more important committee than looking at how our economy is operating and what we need to do to make sure that it continues to do so. Chairwoman Waters has a well-earned reputation for being smart, tough, insightful, fair, courageous in speaking truth to power, and unshakable in the face of challenge. She has stood up to predatory banks, powerful, some of the biggest, richest institutions in the world. And they know Maxine Waters is not backing up a single inch. And my Lord, you know she stood up to Mr. Trump over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you. What a lovely sight to look out over this room with all of you here in attendance today. Steny Hoyer can be very proud to have you as friends and supporters. I am delighted to be here. And I loved that introduction. I didn't want to speak after that. I simply wanted him to keep on talking. But let me just tell you that I am so pleased to be here. And I want to thank Congressman Steny Hoyer for all of those kind words. He is the majority leader, the House of Representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, that's significant. And I appreciate his kind words coming from a friend and again, a colleague, as he said, over 28 years. So thank you, Steny, for inviting me here today, and more importantly, for your consistent, principled, and wise leadership over the decades. Your district and your county benefit greatly from your dedicated service. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand what it means to be majority leader. And as I said, it is a significant position. But more than that, you have to be a great manager of people. Can you imagine every Wednesday morning, Steny Hoyer meets with all of the chairs of the House of Representatives on the Democratic side? And I want to tell you, it's nothing like trying to manage everybody who thinks they know everything. It's nothing like managing those who come from such different parts of the country with different experiences and different ideas about how the country should be run. And then when you have to put up with somebody like me, who insists that I must have time to speak about this low-down, no-good, dirty president of the United States. But he manages. He manages us all, and we work with him as the leader, not only managing all of us, but managing that entire floor, being able to determine how we're going to take all of these ideas for legislation and get them up to be heard, etc. It is a significant position. He does a fabulous job at it. And besides that, he knows how to do the electric slide. And so, I am so pleased to be here with all of these significant women in leadership positions. Steny Hoyer talked to me about Prince George's County State's Attorney Angela Also Brooks, and he told me about the leadership that she is providing. And of course, I was thrilled when she shared with you some of my comments and statements that I made following the insurrection in the greater Los Angeles area. Thank you so much. Give her a big round of applause. And the student body president, who dared to talk with people as old as we are about when she used to be young. Maryland House Delegate Kathleen Dumas with her call to action. Give her a big hand also. And of course, Delegate Edith Patterson, Legislative District 28, acknowledgement of elected officials. A big round of applause. Dr. Gwendolyn Bond in vocation, my God. I don't need to go to church next Sunday. And I was blessed here today by Dr. Gwendolyn Boyd. Big round of applause. State's Attorney for Prince George's County, Aisha Brave Boy, MC. Give her a big round of applause. All of the elected and appointed officials, women, you're doing it up here. Give yourselves a big round of applause. It is very meaningful to be here with you this year celebrating the 100th anniversary of women's vote, the right to vote. The effort began when Margaret Brent of Maryland sought to vote in the Colonial Assembly way back in 1648, but was denied. As the suffrage movement launched in 1848 at the Seneca Falls Convention, Lucretia Mott stated its goal, and I quote, "There will never be a new world order until women are part of it." Maryland women were influential as suffrage trailblazers. Sisters Etta Maddock and Emma Maddock Funk with the Maryland Suffrage Association, Augusta Sissel with the Colored Woman Suffrage Club, Lavinia Ingle with the National American Women's Suffrage Association, and Edith Halton Hooker with the Just Government League and Maryland Suffrage News. After a gradual start, women's voting surged in the 1960s due to activism and the Voting Rights Act. The 1970s women's movement put women's rights on the agenda, and I marched with Gloria Steinem, Bella Abzug, Patsy Mink, Coretta Scott King, and Dorothy Height. We sought equal pay for equal work, reproductive freedom, and the Equal Rights Amendment, which Maryland ratified soon after it passed Congress. In 1982, the ERA stalled after ratification by 35 of the 38 states needed for adoption. Today, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney has a bill to restart ratification, and Congresswoman Jackie Spears' bill would delete the original deadline so more states could join the 35 that ratified it. In the 1980s, we sought career equality. While reproductive rights stayed atop the agenda, we extended education and careers to women who wanted jobs that were reserved for men, from firefighters to fighter pilots. We believed a woman could define herself as she chooses, but critics misstated our motives, claiming feminists were radicals and man-haters. That was offensive. We simply wanted equality and equal respect. Some men seemed threatened by equality as if women's gains were men's loss. In the 1990s, Congress advanced women's issues like the Violence Against Women Act, entrepreneur programs, and access to child care. Maryland's great Senator Barbara Mikulski was among the leaders. But some women felt we were being limited only to gender-specific issues. Critics of the women's movement undermined our efforts. The 2016 election changed all of that. Women were enraged. We mobilized and fought degradation, misogyny, sexual harassment, and everything that the Access Hollywood tape represented. The 2017 Women's March sent that message, uniting women of all ages, ethnicities, and backgrounds. About 700,000 women marched in our capital, with more nationwide. In my opinion, the Women's March revitalized the women's movement, laying roots for the Me Too and the Time's Up movement. Women now demand what is rightfully ours. We're in powerful, influential positions, instituting reforms. We demand parity in government, corporate boards, and everywhere decisions are being made. Suffragette Elizabeth Cady Stanton spoke words that still echo toward us. She said, and I quote, "The right is ours. Have it, we must. Use it, we will." We're using our power and reclaiming our time. A record number of women won elections in 2018. Our success was because of you. You marched, made calls, registered voters, raised money, and voted. And African American women had a huge impact with high turnout, the highest percent of votes for Democrats and getting others to vote. And more women gave more money to candidates than ever before. Let me just talk about all you African American women and what you did. It is very meaningful to be with all of you this year, and as we celebrate the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote. Black women had a major role in the 19th Amendment, just as we've had in every important development throughout our country's history. Today, with 24 million of us, we're a powerful force in politics and government, arts and entertainment, and every aspect of American life. But it was a struggle to reach this point. We have a deep history of overcoming obstacles. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 400-year anniversary of the first enslaved people being brought to these shores. Beginning in 1619, Black women were subject to the whims of slave masters who abused and took advantage of us. We were voiceless in early America. We had no choice, nowhere to turn, and no rights. We were forced to bear the children of slave masters, even by prominent people like Thomas Jefferson, who had liaisons with Sally Hemings, while she was denied her humanity. That practice even continued in recent years with Senator Strom Thurmond, a blatant racist, trying to hide from public view his liaisons with an African American woman with whom he fathered a child. The denial of Black women's rights even took place in some of our own homes by relatives and friends, which Alice Walker reminded us about in The Color Purple. In spite of it all, Black women never lost the will to fight. In the middle 1800s, we began to stand up and push back. After Harriet Tubman freed herself from slavery, rather than relax with her own freedom, she returned to the South about 13 times to rescue over 70 others with her network known as the Underground Railroad. Tubman is a legend for the best of reasons. Sojourner Truth was both a suffragette and an abolitionist, demanding women's rights at the same time that she demanded freedom for African Americans. At the Ohio Women's Rights Convention in 1851, she gave voice to the plight of Black women in what became known as Ain't I a Woman speech. She was one of the original crusaders for women's rights and the right to vote, alongside Lucretia Mott, Susan B. Anthony, Lucy Stone, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who famously declared, and I quote, "The right is ours, have it we must, and use it we will." So the legacy of Tubman and Truth continued in the early 1900s with leaders like Mary McLeod Bethune, who was a forceful civil rights activist, a leader of the National Association of Colored Women, and the creator of the United Negro College Fund. Dorothy Height was a powerful advocate for the civil rights movement, leading the National Council of Negro Women. Fannie Lou Hamer was a great advocate for voting rights, demanding that Black women be included in politics when she seated an alternative delegation at the 1964 Democratic Convention and explained to America, "I'm just sick and tired of being sick and tired." In the late 1960s, Shirley Chisholm became the first African American woman elected to Congress. In 1972, the first to run for the presidency. And remember what she said, "Unbought and unbossed." Barbara Jordan brought her exquisite oratorical skills to Congress and became the first woman and the first African American to keynote a national political convention, captivating her audience at the Democratic National Convention in 1976. Throughout our history, Black women declared, "And still I rise," as Maya Angelou so beautifully stated. Taking that message to heart, the 1970s women's movement put women's rights on the national agenda. Again, I marched I rallied alongside Gloria Steinem, Bella Abzug, Patsy Mink, Coretta Scott King, Dorothy Height. We advocated the equal pay for equal work, reproductive freedom, and the Equal Rights Amendment, which Maryland ratified just 2 months after it was passed Congress. Some people tried to undermine us and minimize the women's movement, but the 2016 election, again, it changed all of that. Enraged by the perpetrator seeking to be president, women mobilized. We fought misogyny again, degradation, sexual harassment, and everything, again, that the Access Hollywood tape represented. The 2017 Women's March sent that message loud and clear. And again, I want you to recognize and never forget that we united women of all ages, ethnicities, and backgrounds. About 700,000 of us, never forget, took to the streets in D.C. with many more marching in cities nationwide. In my opinion, the Women's March is a cause that we have gotten here today. The 2017 March also laid the groundwork, again, for Me Too and Time's Up movements. With a new generation of leaders, women came out of the woodwork to expose sexual and physical abuse by men in all sectors of society. Beside the entertainment industries, we were shocked and surprised at the big names. Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, Bill O'Reilly epitomized the abuses, degradation, and dehumanization that powerful men imposed on ambitious women. It is fitting that the Me Too movement was led by Tarana Burke, a Black woman, as we fight the contemporary version of the historical sexual abuse that dates back to the days of slavery. In recent months, Jeffrey Epstein has become the poster boy for rich, privileged, out-of-control white men who take advantage of girls and women for their own pleasure. He got away with it for years, possibly due to his powerful friends that have been named. They're going to be continued to talk about, and it hurts us to hear about some of them, but we have to call it like it is. They have been named: Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Bill Richardson, George Mitchell, and there will be many others. You know, they say he committed suicide in prison. That's what they say. They say he committed suicide in prison, despite the fact that it was just a few weeks earlier where they say he attempted suicide. And he was supposed to be on suicide watch. And yet, not only was he not on suicide watch, he was supposed to have a cellmate. But on the night that he so-called hanged himself, he was not on suicide watch. He had been exempted from suicide watch. He had no cellmate, and they say he committed suicide. But Black women, in particular, haven't gone everything that I attempted to touch on in history. All I can say, again, is what Maya Angelou said: and still we rise. And still we rise. We're done asking. Now we demand what is rightfully ours. We're in powerful and influential positions. We're instituting the reforms that I alluded to. We demand the equality that I've tried to talk about: enfranchisement and empowerment with parity on corporate boards. In government and everywhere decisions are made that guide our shared destiny. We've progressed from raising awareness to exercising our power. With the help of groups that recruit and train women candidates, we elected a record number of women in 2018. And our success was because of you and sisters nationwide. Wanted more women in office. You mobilized. You marched. Again, you made calls. You registered voters, raised money, and voted. African American women had an especially big impact with high turnout, the highest rate of voting for Democrats and getting others to vote. A record number of women donated record funding, again, reducing the gender gap. The trend continues as the number of women who gave at least $200 to a congressional campaign in the first quarter of 2019 was 25% higher than 2 years ago. At the 19th Amendment's 100th-year anniversary, we have a lot to celebrate. The number of women in the House and Senate rose from 1 in 1919 to 131 capable, caring, competent women armed with new ideas, challenging and legislating. While we won't be satisfied until we reach 50%, the dramatic increase is impressive. Suffragettes like Sojourner Truth and Ida B. Wells would be proud. When I first was elected to Congress in 1990, I was one of only 4 black women in Congress. Today, we have 24 of us in Congress, the highest ever. They would be delighted by the diversity of new women members like Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Presley, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Lucy Macbeth, Lauren Underwood, Johanna Hayes, Katie Porter, Katie Hill, Sharice Davids, Deb Haaland, and Madeline Dean. These highly skilled women hit the ground running, working together at hearings and raising well-researched questions that expose witnesses who didn't know what they were talking about and unprepared for probing inquiry. Yes, this used to be a year of the woman. That's history. This is the era of women in Congress. We are Congress. Women chair these House standing committees, dozens of subcommittees, and I became the first woman and the first African American to chair the Financial Services Committee. And as chairwoman, I have been reclaiming my time. In my first month, I created a new subcommittee of my committee on diversity and inclusion, the first of its kind in Congress, to uplift more women. So we're holding hearings and gathering information about systemic exclusion of women and minorities from jobs and promotions, especially in senior positions. We're insisting on diversity and inclusion at all of the banks and throughout the corporate world in every industry. We're increasing pressure on government agencies overseeing financial services, agencies such as the ones that I oversee under the Financial Services Committee, like the FDIC, the SEC, the OCC, the Fed, and the Treasury Department. So they must and they will improve diversity and inclusion at the companies they regulate. Ladies and gentlemen, I was elected to chair this committee. I have the gavel now, and I know how to use it. And so do the other women in Congress who have the gavel. We know how to use it, and only are we not afraid to use it, sometimes we're going to bang it just because we feel good and we got it and we know how to do it. Women are empowered by our numbers and the strength of our teamwork. United, we will always fight to uphold Roe versus Wade and preserve women's right to choose, especially as Republican-controlled states enact oppressive and regressive laws that would obliterate our rights. With solidarity, we're advancing the legislative agenda that Americans demand and deserve, but which Republicans ignored. All of us are acting together, reclaiming our time. We must be heard, we must be respected, have our needs met, and our opinions prevail. Reclaiming our time signifies our inherent power that we must put to good use. Look around you, and you'll see black women on the rise, making a serious impact. Our success does more than give us hope for the future. It shows that the time is now. Last year, in Harris County, where's that picture? 19 black women were elected as judges. And you know what the slogan was? Black girl magic. And they're all very inspiring. Their group photo is so impressive. You know, it's perfect for a wall of our daughters in the bedroom. And while I speak about all of the women who were elected all over this country to different positions, somehow these black women in those robes speak to what I'm talking about and what we're feeling. Give them a big round of applause. In 2017, black women elected Doug Jones to defeat Roy Moore, the right-wing pedophile, to become Alabama's first Democratic senator in decades. Not only did 98% of black women vote for Jones, we led the drive to register voters and get them to the polls, which boosted black voter turnout by 25%, higher than in 2016. That's amazing. Since it was an off-year special election, it shows the power we hold when we take charge of our elections and our political future. Let us not forget about Stacey Abrams, a strong-willed, eloquent, thoughtful black woman who narrowly missed being elected governor of Georgia. Despite the state's conservative Republican legacy, her election was stolen by her opponent, who was a sitting Secretary of State. Can you imagine the Secretary of State being in charge of overseeing the election? And he was a candidate in the same election? Stenny, somehow we've got to undo that for federal elections. She won voters under 50 with landslide numbers, showing that the future is bright for her, the next generation, and black women nationwide. Black women are becoming mayors of cities across the country. Now, if you don't believe what I've said, Keisha Lance Bottoms in Atlanta, Mayor Lori Lightfoot of Chicago, Muriel Bowser in Washington, D.C., Vi Lyles in Charlotte, London Breed in San Francisco, Latoya Cantrell in New Orleans, Sharon Weston Broome in Baton Rouge, Lovely Warren in Rochester, New York, Tony Harp in New Haven, Connecticut, Takesha James in Bladensboro, Maryland, Tracy Farish Grant in Edmondson, Maryland, Asia Brown in California, Compton, California, straight out of Compton, Aquanetta Warren in Fontana, California, Karen Freeman Wilson in Gary, Indiana, Victoria Woodards in Tacoma, Washington, Yvonne Spicer in Framingham, Massachusetts, Brenda Davis in Stamps, Arkansas, and former Governor Stephanie Rawlins Blake in Baltimore. Give them all a big round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, we're still rising. We rise despite the despicable racist, white supremacist, misogynist man occupying our White House. Donald Trump doesn't miss a chance to offend the American people, especially black women and communities of color. Now, you know, he's offended a lot of us black women. He talked about me, but guess what? I'm Maxine Waters, one of 13 children born in St. Louis, Missouri, with a mother who struggled through 2 marriages and a lot in between. Her name was Vamily Moore. I'm Vamily Moore's daughter. I'm not afraid of anybody. I don't allow anybody to intimidate me. I don't allow anybody to disrespect me without dealing with them. I don't care who it is or whom it is. It can be the President of the United States of America. And the more he talked about me, the more I said, impeach 45. Impeach 45. Impeach 45. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that that was a bold move because I started early. I started just as he was inaugurated to be the President of the United States. I had watched him I saw what he did to his own colleagues in the primary. The names that he called, I knew that he was in bed with Putin of Russia and the oligarchs of Russia. I knew that he knew that Putin undermined our democracy when he hacked into the DNC. He will not criticize him. He will not denounce him. Even today, he's talking about leading the effort to bring him back into the G8. He's doing that even today. And so, I will continue. And I want to tell you this. My colleagues in the Congress of the United States tried to do it right. They didn't jump to the conclusion. They said, let's hear from the special counsel. Let him bring in the evidence. Now, I tried to tell them, I got all the evidence you need. They said, we love you, Maxine, but we really, if we're going to do the impeachment, we've got to do it in a way that we can bring others with us. We've got to make sure that the people in this country are with us. I said, Helston, if you ask black women, they'll all tell you. It's time to take him out. However, he's still there. I think it's a little late, for impeachment. We have an inquiry that started by Nadler, who is the head of our Judiciary Committee, attempting to do it in a way that comports with the Constitution of the United States. But they forgot. This president respects no protocols, doesn't know the Constitution, never read the Constitution, doesn't respect the Constitution. And so we're way more generous than he is, trying to follow the Constitution and do as it demands we do. And that's what my colleagues were simply trying to do. But Maxine told him, he's rotten, he's no good, he's a con man, take him out. Impeach him. Impeach 45. Impeach 45. And so, okay. All right. I hear you. One more time. All right. Thank you. So, women, we're empowered by our numbers and teamwork. United, we will always fight to uphold Roe versus Wade and preserve our right to choose, especially as Republican-controlled states again keep reacting and enacting on these regressive laws that obliterate our rights. And we're going to advance the agenda that Americans demand. We're going to keep doing the kind of work in the Congress of the United States, despite the President of the United States, who is doing everything that he can to undermine the Democratic agenda. But despite that, let me tell you what we have done this year, and Steny mentioned it. We already passed legislation requiring background checks for gun sales, ensuring women of equal pay for equal work, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, protecting consumers from financial predators, reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act, securing Obamacare and pre-existing conditions, lowering drug costs and boosting generic drugs, aiding immigrants and DACA's dreamers, providing $70 billion of job-creating infrastructure, protecting LGBTQ Americans from discrimination, keeping the U.S. in the Paris Climate Accord, and requiring accountability and ethics in government. And when Democrats regain the presidency and the Senate majority, we're going to pursue these priorities. Women in Congress need your help to ensure that women have seats at every decision-making table in America. With each of you engaged arm in arm again, women will fight for the respect and influence that is our right. Until then, despite our victories, this is not a time to celebrate all of our good fortune. Regrettably, we should not congratulate ourselves on achieving rights and better conditions for women, while so many women and men suffer. I cannot in good conscience stand before you and savor any degree of satisfaction. Yes, Steny said it, these are not normal times. Every one of us knows that. These are deeply troubling times. Worse than knowing it, we feel it. Many of us feel it daily, directing through our loved ones And though our loved ones are experiencing troubled times firsthand, many of us can even feel the angst of generations past who fought, suffered, and sometimes died in the cause of justice at the hand of injustice, and who speak to us through the knowledge, legacy, and sensitivity that they instill within us. As members of a conscientious, empathetic, ethical, humanistic community, local and national, we must extend ourselves to our sisters and brothers' shoes. They may or may not look like us, speak the same language, wear the same clothes, or eat the same foods. That doesn't matter. We breathe the same air, care equally about our children, share the same bonds of humanity, and inherit to the same laws of nature. Everyone here knows what I've been talking about somewhat here, what I've alluded to. I'm talking about my concerns that was best stated by Dr. Martin Luther King, who distilled the message through a powerful credo. Injustice, he said, anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If injustice is not stopped, it festers, it spreads, and eventually the dagger of its brutality will be turned toward each of us. Injustice, its siblings, fear, hatred, intolerance, and violence, are like a rampant virus that doesn't discern among victims. Where there is an ongoing opening, they inject their venom. We must not accept these poisons. We must not dismiss them as political tools of a self-serving antagonist. We must not tolerate them through acquiescence. We must not normalize them by inaction or withholding our outrage. Our challenge is intensified by new poisons surfacing daily, each of which requires a response because they're unleashed by this person that I alluded to, who happens to have the presidential seal. It is essential to condemn them, to counter their influence, and replace them with truth. We don't need to recite each instance since everyone here knows the details, and doing so would keep us here until Saturday. Even as we celebrate Women's Equality Day, we're fully aware of, again, the misogyny, cruelty, and antipathy that has been heaped on women. That is an attempt to diminish us. It emboldens states under Republican control to treat us as second-class citizens, passing an epidemic of oppressive laws attacking our reproductive freedoms. We know their leader. We know this purveyor of poison. We know about his venom and display of racism, the white supremacists, disdain for Latinos and Muslims, vilification of immigrants, and contempt for anyone who seeks to hold him accountable, who doesn't lavish praise on him. Virtually everyone is at risk of his wrath sooner or later. Whether his conduct is for his political benefit or because his ethics are as thin as tissue and as dry as dust, it doesn't matter. His followers listen to him. One drove all the way to El Paso to kill Mexicans. It would be tragic to ignore others who may be inspired by his words. He won't condemn white supremacists for fear of offending them. Instead, he seems like their patron saint as he downsizes programs that stop domestic terrorists, especially neo-Nazis and white supremacists, who he called fine people after the Charlottesville violence. If we don't speak against hate and fear, intolerance, injustice, and violence, we are accomplices. It's true that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. If we don't fight the inhumanity of separating immigrant families and caging their kids, then we're complicit. And we sacrifice the moral stature we rely on when women are targeted. We must call out evil and act decisively against it. We must accept responsibility to respond with the full strength of our voices, our social media posts, and our innumerable marching feet. I realize this is not the most uplifting Women's Equality Day speech you've ever heard. It may be a message you never wanted to hear, but I believe that it is necessary. Women have made great strides in the past 50 years, and even more the past 100. But so have African Americans, Latinos, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, Native Americans, Muslim Americans, LGBTQ Americans, and all of us. Everyone's social, economic, and legal victories are not secure. Protections and rights we gained are at risk. Some groups have seen them stripped away, sometimes with sandpaper, sometimes with chainsaws. And we're all in jeopardy. At some point, the venom and injustice must be directed at us. If we don't act now, when women are under attack, we will have fewer tools and fewer allies with whom to lock arms. Women's Equality Day celebrates equal rights, equal pay, equal opportunity, equal protection, and equal access to the American dream. But if the only way to enjoy the full benefits of American society is to genuflect to an autocrat's will, then we'll be signing up for equal dysfunction, equal oppression, and equal marginalization. So, on this Women's Equality Day, we must all vow to mobilize in support of those whose equality is being curtailed right now. Ladies and gentlemen, there are those who say, you Democrats are passing all of these good bills, but you're not going to get them signed into law. This president is not going to sign into law bills that were generated by the Democratic majority. He doesn't believe in what you're doing. He doesn't care about what you're doing. He doesn't have any respect for all of the minorities in this country. And even if they got to his desk and passed Moscow, Mitch, he wouldn't sign them into law. We recognize that, but we're doing our work. We're doing what you sent us to do. And I say to my friends and colleagues, we can do that work. When some people criticize me about spending too much time on getting rid of number 45, I say we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can do our legislative work, and we can keep him high on the agenda, not only pointing to who he is, but the way that he's defined himself. And in doing so, we're again doing the work that people sent us to do. And so, I appreciate your support for Steny because he has earned it. He deserves it. And I want you to know that in addition to all that he does and the way that he's related to his district, I want to give him kudos for having a young, smart, young African-American man run his campaign. Adrian Boapo is the campaign manager. We don't have a lot of African-American campaign managers. So that's another sign that Steny Hoyer understands what diversity is all about. Continue in your blessings and your support. And say prayers, because it always helps. Even with the prayers and your support, count on me. Every morning that I wake up, I got something new I'm going to call number 45. It's not going to be nice because he has not been nice. And I know we love Michelle Obama. And Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. Not me. When they go low, I'm going to get them.